When you look at the Halo franchise from beginning to end, not only can you appreciate the world building that went into developing Halo for what it is, but the game had a magnificent take on the sci-fi genre while juxtaposing itself with elements of horror and eeriness that occur in the later parts of the game. I'm sure many people, when playing through Halo Combat Evolved for the very first time, were enjoying this high-intensity action around every corner, just to have it severely contrasted when they got to the middle part of the game to discover a new enemy, more unnerving and sinister than one might have thought when they first picked up this game. And with Halo having this long legacy throughout the years and multiple different entries, we decided to take it upon ourselves to take a look back in an attempt to find the creepiest level in all of the Halo franchise. Now, of course, jumping into this quest to find the scariest and creepiest level in all of Halo, just to get this out of the way, we know there are scarier games out there than Halo, but let's not downplay what Halo did do in this genre. Like we said earlier, the fact that you have this game that's framed one way just to take a dramatic twist in the midway section of the game was something very rarely done in the gaming space back in 2001, and it's something that paved the road for the future of the series, as around every corner you don't really know what you're going to encounter. Going back to Halo Combat Evolved, we first thought the best place to start would of course be 343 Guilty Spark. There's really so much going on with this level, whether it's the creepy ambiance early on when you're outside just making your way through the forest, you're likely not even sure where you are at this point, and then you stumble upon this Forerunner facility and the Covenant's running away from something. Either way, you decide to continue to push in and find yourself dropping down into catacombs of this odd structure, and along the way at first, you really don't run into all that many enemies. There's something almost unsettling about the fact that after the high intensity you've experienced so far in this game, it's relatively calm. And then of course, we can run into that iconic big reveal where, for the first time ever, the Flood is introduced. And the way that they framed it by doing a found footage thing through Jenkins' head camera was actually really clever. Honestly, there's just so much that's great about this level, whether it be the first action sequence you have when taking on the Flood and seeing the infected corpses of other soldiers or Covenant. There's other things like a terrified Marine, and the sense of urgency you have when you're realizing the situation you're in and you're trying to escape is just a really cool way to paint a level in Halo that hadn't been done yet. But Halo Combat Evolved didn't stop there by just introducing one level that was a little bit spooky. We can go to Keys, for example, which really took things to the next level. Not only did this level kind of put you in this scenario where you're seeing the Covenant and the Flood fighting against each other and you're kind of in the middle, but in a more close quarter setting. But when you're backtracking your way through the area that essentially you've walked through before when you were playing in Truth and Reconciliation, you can see how much the Flood can deteriorate and take over things. And to match that with the fact that we're getting warning messages from Keys himself as we're approaching, it adds this level of eeriness that we really appreciate. And then of course, the moment you run into Keys, I think this section of the level can go without explanation. And I think when people look to Halo Combat Evolved for the creepy levels, these are the two levels that most often get associated with it, but there's one more level that we wanted to include as well, the Maw. Much like how 343 Guilty Spark served as an interesting middle piece to introduce a new element, the Maw was a really unique and creepy way to wrap up Halo Combat Evolved, because not only is it a perfect bookend as it reflects the first level of the game, but we can really see the threat that the Flood is, not only in the form of an enemy, but also in just what this life form is capable of in just a little amount of time. We also have to deal with a betrayal of Guilty Spark and an actual timed section of the game where you don't know if you can make it unless you put that pedal to the metal. It's exciting, it's gripping, and at times it's creepy, and we think the Maw also deserves to at least get a mention in this video as well. But nonetheless, even at this point with the Halo franchise, Halo is known for outdoing itself over and over again, and perhaps the later games in the Halo franchise maybe even up the ante even more than what Combat Evolved had to offer. In Halo 2, there were a few moments that were really iconic that we had to talk about just a little bit. On the level Quarantine Zone, while nowadays a lot of experienced Halo players can just run right through it and get straight to the gondola, but if you're like me, on my first playthrough of this level, when I got to the point where I realized that it was the Flood, driving UNSC vehicles, it was pretty nerve-wracking to say the least. There's nothing scarier when you're playing on a higher difficulty and you see a flood-infected tank just pointing directly at you, or even worse, actually getting shot at by a flood-infected tank. And while we never really get to see this type of encounter again in Halo, the sheer chaos of the flood driving around in vehicles and you're just trying to make your way through as the Arbiter and do his Arbiter thing, it's definitely a memorable experience. On the flip side, High Charity is another great example of a level that's done really well. Not only have we just had the aesthetic and theme set up, the feeling of what High Charity is supposed to feel like when you're playing as the Master Chief on the level Gravemind, but when you get to the High Charity part, you once again are reminded how dangerous the Flood is. And moving through some of those dark corridors where you can't really see too well and there's just the Flood everywhere, it's pretty awesome. Halo 3 actually made some great improvements to the Flood in just the way you combated against them. And having Floodgate as a level that literally took place in the section you were just in, and you can see how rapidly and how the Flood works in real time, is a really unique experience. There's just something about knowing what the Flood's capable of and just seeing the Marines trying to do their best against them, and they're kind of freaking out and they're under attack. You really get this heightened sense that the Flood is really one of the biggest threats and shouldn't be forgotten as a threat. Yeah, in Halo 2 they might have blurred the lines as to some of the Flood's motives, but yeah, in Halo 3 the Flood's on Earth. This is personal now, and it's at the point where even the Covenant drop in to help out the humans at saving their planet. Of course, these are the good elites, but still, it's the first time we fight alongside them, and it kind of gives this extra sense of heightened stakes where it's at the point where Master Chief is just teaming up with elites because this is how bad things have gotten. Cortana is another level that definitely has the creepy factor to it. While it just fully embraces a fully taken over High Charity, the real creepiness factor that works out well on this level is the dialogue that we hear from Cortana and Gravemind. Honestly, there's so much that these characters say throughout the course of this level, and you're constantly being questioned almost with your own sanity, or at least you question the sanity of Cortana at this point, and you wonder if she's beyond damaged, much like Lord Hood had possibly suspected from earlier on in the campaign. Still, nonetheless, you push your way through, and for once, there's something really satisfying about rescuing Cortana here, because it seemed like something Master Chief was forced to put on the back burner, and as soon as he was available to do it, he went on this mission, as personal as it may be, to rescue her from the Gravemind. And while Cortana might not be the scariest level in all of Halo, it's a decent bookend to the Flood story arc that we've seen so far in the main Halo games. But it doesn't mean that the other Halo games that did not have the Flood in it didn't have their creepy moments either. In Halo 3 ODST, playing on Mombasa streets for the very first time and having this sense of complete mystery and the idea of just being completely on your own and lost was something that was really unique and not a perspective that had been done in Halo before. Tie that together with the music that is fantastic and atmospheric. It seems like our opinions towards New Mombasa are constantly changing whenever we do a video on this channel, but honestly, there's no debate. First time you play on Mombasa streets at night as the rookie and you experience the story for the first time, it's one of the best and eeriest moments in all of Halo. Tie that together with all the Easter eggs that are hidden, such as the audio logs where you get to hear the perspective of someone just trying to escape the city while it's under a terrible attack, to other random things like graffiti on the wall or the glyphs, of course. There's something really unique and atmospheric about ODST that makes it stand out with Mombasa streets. And then we can look to Halo Reach, and while Halo Reach doesn't really focus too much on trying to scare players or creep players out, there's definitely a feeling of dread throughout the entire campaign, and it culminates into the final level of the game, Lone Wolf. I don't know what it was that framed this level so differently than any other level from the Halo franchise, but just the fact that the only objective you have left after sacrificing everything and your whole team pretty much giving themselves up in one way or another, except for June, he should have come back and saved us. The feeling in Halo Reach of this ultimate loss, despite the fact that it's still a bittersweet ending. You were able to deliver Cortana, and that would actually end up leading to humanity being saved. And then, severely threatened again when Halo 5 5 Guardians rolls around. But nonetheless, it was a really, really cool way to wrap up the entire story of Halo with Bungie's side and what they wanted to tell in their stories, and leave it off on a bittersweet note. But that last level where you're just fighting and you might not even know that it's this level they'll just run on until you finally die. I don't know. There was just something kind of odd or eerie about this level, and I just wanted to include it here. That last cutscene where you're just fighting, you kind of know what's going to happen, but you don't want to admit to yourself that it's going to happen. I don't know. It's just really cool. So as we continued our journey looking for the #1 scariest level in all of Halo, these were the main candidates that we were looking at. But then there was one more level that we could not possibly make this video without easily putting it at that #1 spot for the scariest level or the creepiest level in all of Halo. Halo 3, The Ark. You know, this level's scary because, I mean, look at all that sand. It's there. And you know, I don't like sand. It's all coarse and rough and irritating, and it gets everywhere. And honestly, the reason we are including this one in the list has nothing to do with the sand. It actually has to do with the scarab here at the end of the level. Okay, so if you jump in the scarab early and you move very, very quickly and leap up inside of it, you can actually ride the scarab out of bounds. When you're outside of the map, if you go ahead and destroy the scarab, for whatever reason, the scarab's scripting continues to make its way into the destroyed parts, and while obviously the scarab doesn't have a built-in AI, the dead scarab kind of comes to life and will smack you in the face if you're not careful. And honestly, how erratic and odd this occurrence is, and while we don't fully understand why it does this, there's something that always feels very personal about those legs and how they move and try to kill us. I don't know, I always feel like it's directly targeting me every single time we do this glitch, and yeah, it's creepy. Maybe it's not the scariest thing in all of Halo, but it's pretty good, and we wanted to at least talk about it here. I think I made a good enough case for all the other ones that are on this list that we can justify this one to just be in the list because I said so. But hey, if you guys like this video, make sure you guys subscribe with notifications on for more videos like this so you actually get notified whenever we actually put out content.
And make sure to check out our live streams at twitch.tv/RocketSlothYT. We stream there twice a week, sometimes even more.
And sometimes even less.